What's there to say? There's nothing but space in between you and I. It's okay that we change, but it feels kinda strange that you're not in my life. You're the only one that saves me when I'm alone. You're the only love that I've ever known. But we turn into a flower that never grows. I was hiding like the moon, like that never shows. I should've told you that I loved you. One more time, one more time, one more time. I should've told you that I loved you. One more time, one more time, one more time. I should've told you that I loved you every night. Oh, that's on my mind. I should've told you that I loved you. One more time, one more time. Would you have stayed if I had been honest with you from the start?
Hey everyone, so I get a lot of questions on all of my videos, which are basically to explain more in detail what I do technically. So I think for the format of this video, I'm actually going to just sort of describe what I do on a day-to-day, and then I'll insert clips of me doing those things throughout the day so that you have a more technical understanding of what it is that I do and I have more time to explain it. A lot of times what's happening is I'm vlogging during the day, but then I'm actually working on something, so I don't really have the time to explain what's going on. But for today, I actually wrote down all of the things that I did today so that I can explain them in more detail, and then I can show y'all what it is specifically that I do. So obviously for personal and privacy reasons, I can't really disclose what it is that I actually work on, just because one, that's protected by an NDA, so I'm legally bound to not really talk about it outside of my work. Two, just to protect myself and my own personal privacy, I don't really want to talk about what I do on a more specific level, but generally I do work on an application. I'm a full stack web developer doing both front-end and back-end work on a web application, so that's where my work is mostly focused, and it has a lot of the traditional components of a typical web application, and those are what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. So this morning I actually worked on a new method we're trying out to make changes to our database. So I'm not talking just general insertions, deletions, revisions of current data, but I'm talking about actual changes to the structure of the database. A lot of different organizations have different ways that they go about this, and we currently have one way, but we're actually trying to change it to a new way that's basically just putting some SQL into our code base that will run automatically when it's pushed to production. So we're testing out this new method, and I had something that I needed to change within our production level databases. So my code was some of the first to try out this new method, and we did a lot of debugging. Nobody was really 100% clear how exactly it was going to work, so I made some changes that I thought would work. They didn't work. So a lot of my morning was spent me going back and forth with other people about what those changes were, why it worked, why it didn't work, and how we could fix them. So by the later morning, we were able to sort of get that squared away, and we have tests that run every time we make a change. So I could tell that my code wasn't working because there were certain tests that were failing. So we basically got it to a point where those tests passed and everything was working properly. Hello, and welcome to today's day of work. I'm working on some code. So we actually have somewhere in our code base where it's possible for a SQL injection to happen. And if you're unfamiliar with what a SQL injection is, on a high level, it's basically a security vulnerability that could allow people who are acting maliciously to abuse the software that we have and sort of deal with or tamper the data inside. So I'm looking into one of these issues. It's pretty important. The way that a user would find it is obviously quite challenging, but it's definitely there. So I'm working on a ticket now to resolve that issue. Okay, I reheated some dim sum for lunch. I'm excited about that. Literally my favorite food. And I just noticed, I just noticed that it's snowing outside. So yay, that's nice. Happy winter, people. Another thing I did today was a very simple change actually in HTML. We have an interface that we modernize, so some users see it in a more modern version and some users see it in an older version depending on their preferences and other factors. So it turned out that some things within the modern version were actually hiding certain fields that were present in the older version that were necessary to have. So I basically went through and just made sure that every single field was visible in this particular window for the modern version. It was just an accident that when we were coding it before, we didn't double check every single field, so it turned out that some of them weren't visible. So this was a very simple change. I just moved some code around and everything was able to work after that. Okay, it's a little later now and I just put up a code review for the change that I was working on, and by that I just mean I asked the other engineers on my team to just look over my code to make sure that they think it looks good as well before we go ahead and test it. But now sometimes when people on my team are working on really small changes or just things that aren't too important, we just test them for one another so that we don't bother our QA engineers. They have a lot of work and a lot of things they have to get done, so we just do a lot of the stuff ourselves that doesn't necessarily need a closer eye. So somebody asked me to look over their code and their changes, so not only am I going to look at their code, but I'm also going to look at the application that they made and just make sure that it looks good to me and I can't find anything objectively wrong with it. Then I had some general one-on-ones with various people. I had just a one-on-one with one of my friends just to catch up, see how they were doing. I had a one-on-one with someone on my team who's not an engineer but provides a different perspective, and that's always interesting to hear. Especially in COVID, it's good to, I feel like, check up on people, just make sure people are having some human interaction. So I definitely have a lot of meetings that might seem pointless since we don't really have an agenda, but it's always good to improve team camaraderie. So today I actually had 3 of those, which was good. I learned a lot from some of them, others were just banter, but always fun to have. And then a lot of the day today we're actually having an event where we get to learn a lot more about the company, about what everybody else is working on. So a lot of my day was actually just Zoom meetings, different learning sessions, different speakers, and I got to ask a lot of questions about things we're working on, what the future holds for everyone. So that was quite interesting actually. I was spending a lot of time debugging some other issues related to the things I talked about specifically while those meetings are on, but there was actually an interesting one toward the end of the day which I really enjoyed. That was more about just companies in general, business in general, what makes a successful business, how my company can grow into that. So that was particularly interesting to me just because I feel like the presenter had a lot of real world experience and it seemed very relevant to my life. Okay, it's a little later and my company is actually doing some fun events later today and we're doing a wine tasting. So I'm gonna prepare for that by getting the bottles of wine that I have and yeah, just participate over Zoom. Yeah, and then after that, I just had a pretty relaxing day. I actually teach, if you didn't know, a online coding class for elementary schoolers. So I just taught that in the evening, and then I watched The Bachelor with my friends, and now I'm settling in for the night.
Don't say it's okay if I'm falling and you're running away. You're the only one that saves me when I'm alone. You're the only love that I've ever known. But we turned into a flower that never grows. I was hiding like the moonlight that never shone. I should've told you that I loved you. One more time, one more time, one more time. I should've told you that I loved you. One more time.